Welcome back to another edition of Courtside with Rob and Washut. And man, what a Tuesday night that was here in Pinnacle Bank Arena. 90-55. Huskers absolutely demolish Oregon in every sense. In a game that was 28-28 deep into the first half. The Huskers basically just took the game over in every sense. It started with defense. They were able to rebound and set the tone in transition and play with the pace that they wanted. Then the threes started falling and they were able to score fast break points. They limited Oregon on the offensive boards. They didn't get any shots blocked. Really just go down the list of everything that Fred Hoiberg wanted to accomplish in this game. And if you probably looked at their whiteboard in the locker room and their game plan of key 1, 2, 3, 4, Nebraska executed everything to absolute perfection. And this was a game that, they were expected to win big. I think they opened around 11.5-point favorites, and the game was never really in doubt after the break. And this, I think, again, there's a lot of testaments that you can make about this team and what they've done to this point. But this was another example of it because of how unique it was. This was a Big Ten conference game that they were expected to not just win, but to dominate. And they did so in about as convincing fashion as you could possibly imagine. So, every game is something new for this group and kind of another litmus test to see what they're all about. Yeah, you can go and win on the road when you're underdogs. You can beat Michigan State when it's, kind of a big game atmosphere. But a Tuesday night, 8 o'clock tip against a struggling Oregon team that was without their best player in Jackson Shelstad, one of their best players. He was out with a wrist injury. That made a big difference with what Oregon's backcourt was able to do. But to Nebraska's credit, they pounced on him. They saw a wounded duck, so to speak, and absolutely put the game away to where Oregon was just struggling to keep it within 40. And I look at some of the reasons why it starts on the glass. That was probably priority number one on Fred Hoiberg's game plan because Oregon, their biggest strength arguably was their offensive rebounding. They ranked 23rd nationally in offensive rebounding percentage coming in, and that was the one way that I thought that they could give Nebraska problems by getting second chance opportunities, controlling the pace of the game by milking the shot clock, and using the size and length advantage that was pretty clear and apparent to their advantage. And Nebraska, not only did they handle that and keep that in check, they actually out-rebounded Oregon. I think they were +5 on the boards. They out-rebounded Oregon by 1 and held the Ducks to less than half of their season average on offensive boards. So that, I think, is where it started. They took away Oregon's greatest strength and were able to completely negate that from the game. And then the other flip side of it was on offense. The way Oregon was going to give them problems with that size and length was by blocking shots at the rim and taking away the paint. Well, certainly helps when you make 17 three-pointers with tied season high for Nebraska, and when you're just shooting over those bigs, that makes life a whole lot easier for you. But I thought when they did go into the paint, more often than not, the Huskers made the right choices. They weren't getting, just running into traffic with no plan. You didn't see guys going off 1 foot and getting knocked around, leading to wild shots that get blocked and vice versa, or ensue into transition opportunities for Oregon. So that was the other key part of it, the way that they were able to, negate Oregon's greatest defensive strength by not letting those blocks kind of alter the way Nebraska wanted to play offensively. And then obviously when you have guys like Price Sanford, Braden Frager, combining for 14 of those 17 three-pointers, just absolutely electric performance by both of those players. And Price, he's been there, done that. But, Braden Frager's evolution is really one of the more remarkable stories of this season, not in the sense that how well he's playing, but the way that he's growing up before our eyes. And I'm sure I've touched on this before, but a big thing that jumped out to me wasn't just his career high 23 points. He bettered the 21 that he scored against West Georgia in the season opener. But the way that he did it without kind of making a scene of it, he's a guy that has so much swagger, so much confidence, And, you go back to the Michigan State game that got the best of him, where he let that enthusiasm and, the energy of the game uh, end up in a technical foul. He got the cylinder call and obviously the taunting technical on Jeremy Fears. Then he made it even worse by posting the now deleted social media picture, with him and that celebration. So it's been clear since that game going into, obviously Indiana, then Ohio State, then Indiana in particular, that Braden's trying to channel that energy the right way. And today I thought was probably the second half against Indiana, I think is where it started. And that carried over into tonight, where I thought that his performance against Oregon was not only his best because of the way that he shot the ball and scored the ball, but the way that he did it without any coming anywhere close from being a detriment to his team. And I guarantee you that was hammered into his head from Fred Hoiberg, from all the assistant coaches, from all of his veteran teammates, that we want you to play with swagger. We want you to have that edge and have that dog to your game, but it can't be at the expense of our team's success. And you see Braden when he's throwing down poster dunks. It's 2 games in a row now. He's just dunked on a dude. And, maybe a few months ago or maybe even a few weeks ago, he stares the guy down or maybe says something and risks getting teed up. You know what he does? Keeps his hands down, doesn't say a word, and runs down the floor. And I think that's growth. That's maturity. For a young kid that is kind of learning on the fly a little bit, he's the youngest guy out there with a whole bunch of grown men that have been there and done that. He's picking up pretty quickly about what those guys are kind of hammering into his head over the course of this season. So, and then the other highlight for me and everyone else, Sam Hoiberg. What more can you say about what he means to this team that hasn't already been said? I don't know, but I do know that this was maybe his best all around performance, or certainly up there. It started with his effort defensively. 6 steals, career high, 2 short of the Nebraska single game steals record, and it tied for the most, or no, it set the PBA Husker record for steals in a game and was the most since Glenn Watson had 6 back in 2017. So, I mean, that in itself is quite the feat. But then you pair it with his team high 5 assists, his 11 points on 5 of 6 shooting, his 3 rebounds, and the way that, along with Jamarcus Lawrence, he was able to help set that controlled pace offensively that, Nebraska had 20 assists and only 5 turnovers. Sam Hoiberg played 32 minutes, 5 assists, 6 steals, 0 turnovers. Jamarcus Lawrence, 4 assists, 0 turnovers. Like that, to me, is a huge part of why Nebraska's offense clicked it the way that they did. It started on defense, but then the next step is your guards and your ball handlers have to be under control and yet push the pace to make this thing click the way that it can hit its full potential. So Sam was all over the place. Like I said, he did everything. He stuffed the stat sheet once again. And there was already, in my mind, no question that Sam is the heartbeat of this team. Like when he is good, everybody kind of builds off of that. The ripple effect of Sam Hoiberg's impact is as large as maybe anybody on this roster. And, again, this was maybe the best example yet, but certainly one of them, of just how invaluable he is to this Nebraska team and his play every single night, and not just in games, but the way that he sets the tone every day in practice is a critical piece to why we're sitting here at 17-0. So a lot to like about this one, obviously. But again, the way that they came off 2 straight, tough road wins in games that, they could have gone the wrong way for them at Ohio State and Indiana. And then to come back home for their first game with students since the Wisconsin game back in early December, and play off that emotion and channel it the right way, even your young guys like Braden, and take care of business the way that they did with such an exclamation point. I mean, it's hard to add more impressive layers to what has already been the most impressive season in program history. but they found a way to do it again tonight. And again, with the way that they're rolling right now, I don't see this thing slowing down anytime soon. Thanks for tuning in. It's Courtside with Rob and Washut. Again, thank you to our sponsor, Group Therapy Bike Tours. Great friends of the show, great friend of mine. Drew and the crew will get you all set up with your rides there. We shot my pregame video today. You saw they got the enclosed trolley that I've been in those before, and it could be 10 degrees outside, and you won't even need a coat because it's so warm and toasty. Keeps you dry even if it's raining or snowing or whatever it is. And it's just a blast. And with the rest of the remaining home schedule likely to be sold out by the next time we're back here, I would book those to make sure that your pregame, postgame, or even mid-game experience is the best it can be. And use your promo code NEBRASKetball to get 15% off of your first ride with group therapy at grouptherapybiketours.com. Thanks again for everybody joining me. We'll see you next time.